I remember the exact moment it broke me. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon. I had just finished baking banana bread, the way my daughter used to love when she was little. I called her, hoping to chat, maybe share a laugh, but she picked up with a sigh and said, "Mom, I really can't right now. You always call at the worst times." Then click. She hung up. No goodbye, no "I love you." Just silence. I stood there, still holding the phone, the scent of warm bread filling the kitchen, and I felt invisible. I had raised her on my own. I worked night shifts at the hospital, skipped vacations, skipped meals, skipped sleep, just so she could have the kind of life I never did. And now, I was a burden, background noise, a story she no longer wanted to hear, and it wasn't just her. My son only called when he needed help with the kids or money for some emergency. Birthdays came and went with texts, not even a voice, not even a visit. I started asking myself, when did I stop being someone they admired and become someone they tolerated? But I want to tell you something important. This is not a story about sadness. It's a story about what happened when I decided I wouldn't be invisible anymore. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I used to think being a good parent meant never saying no. So when my son, Michael, started speaking to me like I was his assistant, not his mother, I told myself, he's stressed, he's busy, he doesn't mean it. When he snapped, "Why do you always call when I'm working?" I apologized. When he asked me to babysit the kids last minute for the third time that week, I dropped everything, even when I had a doctor's appointment. And slowly, without realizing it, I taught him something dangerous. That I didn't matter. He didn't wake up one day and decide to stop respecting me. I trained him. Every time I bit my tongue instead of expressing hurt, every time I gave without boundaries, every time I made excuses for his coldness, I was teaching him it was okay. It all changed one Sunday. He called, asking if I could watch the kids for the weekend. Not asking really, more like expecting. I had plans, a pottery class I'd signed up for weeks ago, my first new hobby in years. And for once I took a breath and said, "I'm sorry, but I already have plans. You'll need to find someone else." Silence. Then, "Oh, okay." No anger. No guilt tripping. Just surprise. And when I hung up, I felt something I hadn't. In a long time, solid, grounded, like I had stepped back into my own shoes. That was the beginning of a quiet revolution. The first lesson I learned. You can't teach someone to respect you if you're constantly begging for approval. You teach them by showing through boundaries, confidence, and your own self-respect. And let me tell you something. Once you stop chasing their approval, something incredible happens. They start chasing your attention. Let's keep going. There was a time I thought silence would keep the peace. Whenever my daughter, Lily, rolled her eyes at my advice or interrupted me mid-sentence to say, "Mom, seriously, you don't get it," I'd just nod and retreat. I thought avoiding conflict meant being the bigger person, but all it did was make me invisible. The real turning point came on her birthday. We were at a family dinner. I spent the whole day cooking her favorite dishes. I'd even found the old photo album she used to love as a child. I thought we were having a nice evening, until she looked at her phone, sighed, and said, "You know, you don't need to try so hard. I'm not 12 anymore." It stung. Not just her words, but the way she said them, like my effort was an annoyance. And for a moment I felt the old habit creeping in. Apologize, change the subject, shrink. But instead, I breathed. I looked her in the eyes and simply said, "That really hurt." She froze. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I just named the feeling, and something unexpected happened. She softened. Her eyes welled up just a bit. "I didn't mean it like that, Mom," she mumbled. That night, I learned something powerful. You don't need to raise your voice to raise your worth. Respect doesn't grow from confrontation. It grows from modeling the calm, firm presence you want, mirrored back to you. From that day on, I stopped reacting to every slight and started responding with dignity. I let silence speak when needed and used my words carefully when they mattered most. and slowly Lily started listening again. Not because I demanded respect, but because I became someone who quietly, undeniably deserved it. The hardest part wasn't being disrespected, it was realizing how much of my happiness had come to depend on whether or not my son texted me back. Every morning I would glance at my phone just to check. A "good morning, Mom" used to light up my whole day. When it didn't come, I'd feel that quiet ache settle in. I told myself it was love, that this was what loving a child looked like, always. Hoping, always giving. But one evening I sat on my porch staring at the sky after another day of silence, and it hit me. I'd built my emotional world around someone else's attention. That wasn't love. That was need. The next morning, I did. Something small but life-changing. I made myself a cup of tea and didn't check my phone. I went for a walk without it. I sat by the lake and watched the ducks swim, the light ripple across the water, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. I began filling my days with little joys, old hobbies I'd forgotten I loved, new recipes I tried just for fun, books I hadn't finished. I even joined a local watercolor class on a whim. 2 weeks later, my son called. His voice was different, curious, a little confused. "Hey, Mom, are you okay? I haven't heard from you." I smiled, not out of spite, but from a place of quiet strength. "I've been doing well," I said, "just enjoying my time." That was the first time in years he asked what I'd been up to, not out of obligation, but out of genuine interest. You see, when you stop needing their attention, they start giving it more freely, because respect often follows where independence leads. I want to ask you something that took me years to ask myself. If someone crosses your boundaries again and again, whose fault is it? I used to think it was just how family works, that being a parent means swallowing disrespect for the sake of peace. Until one evening, during a dinner at my daughter's house, she interrupted me 3 times in front of her. Kids. I laughed it off. Everyone did. But when I got home, I didn't feel amused. I felt invisible. That night, I wrote a single sentence in my journal. A boundary not enforced is just a suggestion. The next week, I invited her to lunch. Not to fight, not to lecture, but to speak clearly. "When you interrupt me like that," I said, "I feel like my voice doesn't matter. I need us to speak to each other with the same respect we expect from anyone else." She stared at me for a second, then said, "I didn't realize I was doing that." Of course she didn't, because I never showed her it mattered. That was the start of a new season in our relationship. Setting a boundary isn't about building a wall. It's about building a doorway, one where people learn how to enter your life with care. If you're afraid it will push them away, let me tell you what I've learned. The people who truly love you will adjust. The ones who don't, well, maybe they were only there because you had no door. So today I challenge you, just one boundary. Maybe it's the tone they use. Maybe it's the time they call. Maybe it's the way they speak to you in front of others. Say something. Kindly, calmly, but clearly, because your voice matters, but only if you use it. Let me ask you something simple but powerful. If your child were asked, "What does your mom or dad love doing besides being a parent?" how would they answer? For years I didn't have an answer myself. After my husband passed, I threw everything into my kids. I called them constantly. I asked about every detail in their lives. I gave advice they didn't ask for, and when they pulled away, I clung harder. One day my son said something that stung more than anything else. He said, "Mom, I love you, but I don't know who you are anymore if you're not just my mom." I cried that night, but not because of the words, because I knew he was right. The next morning I wrote down 5 things I used to love before I had kids: painting, gardening, playing the piano, reading history books, volunteering at the animal shelter, and I made a promise to myself I would become a whole person again. At first it felt strange, going to a painting class surrounded by people half my age, getting dirt under my nails, in the backyard. But something started to change. I smiled more. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes for a message that never came, and then something unexpected happened. My daughter called me just to ask how my garden was doing. My son sent me a book he thought I'd like. They started seeing me as someone interesting, Not just the person who gave them life, but someone who still had a life of her own. That's the shift. When you live a life that fills you, you stop demanding so much from theirs. And ironically, that's when they start coming closer. This isn't about pulling away. It's about showing them that you are still becoming, still dreaming, still growing. So today ask yourself, what did I love before I became someone's everything? Then go. Do one small thing that brings that version of you back to life. Not for them, for you. And trust me, they'll notice. Let's take a deep breath together, because now we've reached the part where it all comes together. You've listened to 6 powerful shifts. You've probably nodded at some, felt uneasy at others, and maybe even seen yourself in the stories. So let's gather it all, clearly and gently. First, stop chasing approval. You are already enough. Your worth is not tied to how often your kids call or how much they follow your advice. Second, don't fight for respect in arguments. Show it through quiet strength. Be the example they didn't know they needed. Third, create emotional independence. When you're centered within yourself, your presence becomes a peaceful place they want to return to. Fourth, set boundaries that mean something. Respect yourself first, and others will learn how to follow. Fifth, stop giving in ways that drain you. Give wisely. Give when it's received with gratitude, not expectation. And sixth, become someone outside of parenthood. Build a life so rich that your children become curious, not guilty about what you're doing next. None of this is easy, but it's powerful. And when these pieces come together, something shifts, not just in your relationship with your children, but in your relationship with yourself. Now, I made a promise at the beginning. I said I'd share the one sentence that changed everything for me. Here it is. You don't have to agree with me to respect me. That's it. The first time I said that to my daughter, she paused. She didn't argue. She didn't roll her eyes. She just looked at me and nodded, and from that moment on, the air between us changed. So here's your challenge. Pick one of these 6 steps. Just one. Try it this week. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just honestly. Then come back here and tell us how it felt. Because there's a whole community here learning to rebuild respect. One small act at a time. You're not alone, and you're not too late. Before we end, take this with you. Being a parent doesn't end when your child grows up, but who you are. Outside of that role, that's where the magic lives now. Let that version of you rise again. You are still worthy of being seen, still worthy of being heard, and yes, still worthy of deep, unwavering respect. When I first began this journey of reclaiming respect, I honestly thought it was about getting my kids to behave differently. But now I know. It was always about becoming someone they naturally look up to again. And not just my children. These 6 shifts have changed how I show up everywhere. At the grocery store, with old friends, even alone in my kitchen making tea in the quiet. Respect begins with how you treat yourself when no one's watching. So let's walk through them one more time, quickly, not to memorize, but to feel. Number 1, stop seeking approval. You don't need permission to be who you are. Number 2, don't argue, be the calm in the storm. Let your example speak louder than your voice. Number 3, pull back your emotional dependence. Fill your own cup and you'll stop feeling empty. Number 4, set real boundaries and keep them. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. Number 5, give with intention. Your energy is precious, protect it. And number 6, build a life of your own. Passion is magnetic, even to your grown kids. If you've made it this far, that already says something about you. You're not just hoping for change, you're working for it, quietly, strongly, and I see that in you. If one of these parts hit home, tell me in the comments below, which one will you start with this week? And if this story helped you, pass it along to someone else who might need it. A sister, a friend, or maybe one of your children. Because these aren't just parenting tips, they're lessons in dignity. And no matter your age, you deserve to walk through life with your head high and your heart at peace. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next story. We're just getting started.